3 out of the 4 books I'm holding up in that thumbnail are just random from my shelf because 3 of the books that I read this month were ebooks, so yeah, these just mean nothing. Hello, beautiful people of the internet. How are you doing today? My name is Jackie and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today in this video, I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read in the month of December 2020. Finally, this year is over. So for my December TBR, I did my inaugural Scrabble Picks My TBR game, and in that TBR video, which I will link down below, I picked out 5 books to read. I got to all but one of them. I did not read any of The Priory of the Orange Tree. This is a huge epic fantasy that I started months ago. I've read more than 50% of it, I think maybe like 65%, but I put it down for so long and I still haven't finished it. I just got busy in the middle of the month, didn't read a lot, and so I didn't have time to fit this back in, but maybe in January I can finally finish this book. I feel like I have been reading it forever. I've been working on it on and off for months, but I really do want to finish reading it because I've read so much of it already and I don't want those 600 something pages to be for nothing. So hopefully in January. Good news is I did finish the 4 other books that I picked for that TBR, so I read a total of 1,341 pages, and my average star rating was 3.75 out of 5 stars. So let's get into what I read in December. The first book that I read in December was House of Salt and Sorrows by Aaron A. Craig. I gave this 3 stars. This is a dark 12 dancing princesses retelling. It takes place in a fantasy world and follows our main character Annalee, and several of Annalee's sisters have died mysteriously. Annalee begins to suspect that the deaths of her sisters were not accidents as she begins experiencing ghostly visions, and her surviving sisters have been sneaking out every night to go dancing at a ball through a portal they discovered, but who or what are they really dancing with? I was excited to read this book because it combines young adult fantasy with a murder mystery plot, and that sounded super interesting to me. I did really love the gothic atmosphere of this story, and I also appreciated that the names of Annalee and some of her sisters were references to Edgar Allan Poe and his various writings. I'm assuming Annalee's name is a reference to Annabel Lee, which is my favorite Edgar Allan Poe poem. It actually took me a really long portion of the book to realize what all the sisters' names had in common, like Lenore, Annalee. Oh yeah, Edgar Allan Poe stories. The book was a little slow going for me at the beginning, but then as I continued on, I did get really invested in the story, and I really wanted to know what the resolution was going to be and why the sisters in this family kept dying. However, I did have some problems with the book. I think the world building was a little confusing at first because this takes place in a fantasy world. However, I wasn't sure exactly what time period it was trying to evoke, because there would also be references to the sisters reading romance novels and their estate has running water. I'm assuming, based on some of the references to dances, that they were in a 19th century-esque fantasy setting, but at the beginning this was not really clear. Without spoiling anything, this did become a bit of a problem because the ultimate reveal relies on an aspect of the world building that I did not fully understand at first. I have a Goodreads review for this book where I include spoiler tags to explain exactly what I mean by that. It's really hard to explain how the ending to this book failed for me without spoiling it. What I will say about the ultimate resolution to the sisters' deaths is that it includes multiple reveals, and because of that, I felt like the ending was both out of left field and predictable at the same time. There was one aspect to the resolution that I think, at least in my reading experience, it would be very hard for the reader to predict, And then there was another aspect that to me felt very obvious. This book is also a little heavy-handed on the romance side plot, so if you don't really enjoy romance in your books, then maybe this wouldn't be a book for you. The romance was okay. It didn't detract from my reading experience, but I also wasn't emotionally invested in the relationship. One thing I will say I did like about this book, though, is that I had multiple different theories as I was going through the book, so I do think that the author managed to fool me in some regards. I do think some of the red herrings did fool me. However, what the reveal ultimately was a letdown for me. I would, though, read other books by Erin A. Craig because I did like the atmosphere of this and I think it had a lot of potential. Since this was her debut novel, I definitely think that future books from her could be more enjoyable than this one was to me. The next book I read in December was The Wife by Ella Fair Burke, and I ended up giving this 4 stars. Angela is a caterer in the Hamptons when she meets Jason Powell, a economics professor at NYU, and the two of them get married and settle into a life together with Angela's son, Spencer. Angela likes to keep herself out of the limelight due to a traumatic incident from her past. However, Jason gains fame after he publishes a successful book. But Jason's new fame comes with a price as women come out of the woodwork to accuse him of sexual misconduct. And then things take a turn when one of the women goes missing. I read this book closer to the beginning of December and I'm already forgetting some of the details of it, but I will do my best. I will say this book is a bit of a slow burn at the beginning. However, once I got closer to the end, I think the pace really picked up and I got very engrossed in the story. I stayed up pretty late to finish my ebook. The end of this book had reveals upon reveals upon reveals, and it was really exciting. The ending and the ultimate reveal was surprising to me, but in retrospect, I could see how the author had laid the foundation for this reveal, and I don't understand how I didn't figure it out because all of the pieces were there, staring me in the face. I should have been able to figure it out, and yet I didn't, and that's something that I really like in thrillers. I want to be surprised, but also know that all of the evidence was there, and I could have figured it out if I had been paying attention close enough. However, some of the implications of the ending I did not love. Obviously, this book deals with a very sensitive and relevant issue with women accusing a man of sexual misconduct, and some things that happened in the ending I didn't really love the message that was sending. Overall, I liked this well enough. The beginning was a little slow, but the ending was interesting, even if I didn't love everything about it. This book also does spend a good deal of time with the police officer on this case, and we follow her point of view for many chapters. So if you don't love thrillers that also include the police officer as a heavy component, then I wouldn't recommend this one. Next, I read my first ever Stephen King book, and that was Misery, which I gave 4 stars. I am not a big horror person, but I wanted to read a Stephen King book because he is such a prolific author and one of the most famous authors that are writing right now, I think. And I decided that I was going to read Misery first because it was just the book of his that sounded the most interesting to me. This follows Paul Sheldon, an author who is injured in a car accident, and he is rescued by Annie Wilkes, his obsessive, self-proclaimed #1 fan. However, now that Annie has Paul, she doesn't want him to leave, and she is effectively holding him hostage, forcing him to write a new installment in one of his most popular series for her. And if he doesn't do what she wants, then there's going to be life and death consequences. I gave this book 4 stars because I thought it was incredibly well written and it successfully did what I think it set out to do, but Did I like it? I don't know if I did or not. I definitely think it was well done, but considering this book is entirely about a man being held hostage, it was deeply disturbing, so it wasn't exactly fun to read. There were parts where something would happen that was so disgusting and disturbing that I just had to put the book down for a while and walk away because it was troubling. Stephen King's mind must be a very dark and messed up place if he can come up with stuff like this. That being said, I have read books before that do have disturbing and graphic sequences like this. For example, some of the later A Song of Ice and Fire books. Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter included a torture scene, and I still enjoyed those books despite their disturbing elements. As horrified as I was by some things that happened in Misery, I think that shows how effectively Stephen King did what he set out to do, because this fictional scenario genuinely made me uncomfortable and disturbed. Personally, I really enjoyed the segments we got to see of the book that Paul is writing for Annie. I saw some people on Goodreads didn't like those sections as much, but I actually really enjoyed them. Misery was written in the 1980s, and there were a few throwaway lines that I did not think were necessarily PC, should we say, and I didn't love that. I also think that towards the end, I was a little bit waiting for the book to be over and for Paul to either die or escape or whatever it was he was going to do already. For me, the book went on a little too long towards the end. Overall, I would consider reading Stephen King again, though probably not anytime soon, because I think I need a little mental respite from what was going on in this book. And then the final book I read in December and the final book I read this year was The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I ended up giving this 4 stars, however, that rating could definitely change. I think my opinions about this book are not fully formulated at this time. I really am gonna have to sit on it for a couple months and see how the story stays with me. This is a classic novel following our title character, Dorian Gray. Dorian has a portrait painted of him, and he makes an offhand wish that he can keep his youth and the portrait will age instead. And that wish ends up coming true. This novel follows Dorian Gray on his life of debauchery, pursuing pleasure wherever you can find it, all the while not aging. I thought the writing in this book was exquisite. There were some beautiful lines describing what was going on, describing the setting around the characters, and also plenty of the trademark Oscar Wilde witty one-liners, which I really enjoyed. This book was not received well by contemporary audiences at the time of its publication. There were also some homoerotic undertones that had to be toned down in later editions due to the 19th century views about homosexuality, but personally, as a 21st century reader, I really enjoyed the homoerotic undertones. This is also a really short classic. It is 213 pages plus some notes and critical essays at the end, and I wish the ending had been a little bit longer, personally. Overall, I did enjoy this, but like I said, I think I have to ruminate on it a while, really think about it, and if a couple months from now I am still thinking about this book and loving it, then I will say it's one of my all-time favorites. Right now, I think it's too early to tell. So everyone, those were the books that I read in the month of December 2020. Did you read any of the books that I read this month? If so, please let me know down in the comments section. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed, and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more from me. I post new videos every single Wednesday. My social media links are down below if you want to follow me on Tumblr, Instagram, or be my friend on Goodreads. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a radiant rest of your day. Bye, and I'll see you in the next one.